And all right, so hi everybody. Again, this is Jessica with Simply Do It. I'm here with Dani tonight and all of you guys. And as promised, we're going to go over the top 10 most commonly asked questions that we've had from all of our remote investors. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of insight on some things that you maybe hadn't thought of before, or ways to solve problems that might come up for you in the future. So I'm going to hand it over to Dani.
Very good. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. Getting ready for the holidays. Getting excited with with the kind of end of the year. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I always like to kind of check who's on the line and where people are registering from. So we have a very nice, polite Canadian person, Narotam, who joins with a camera. Thank you for doing it. And Kristen just joined the camera. I appreciate it. Always so nice to actually see faces. Some of the names I do recognize as active investors of ours. Some of the names I don't, maybe from previous. So thank you. My name is Dani Beit-Or. I'm here. I'm the one who's kind of waving his hands, just in case you're not sure who's speaking with the boxed part of Zoom. I'm going to introduce myself fully in a few minutes, or in a minute or two. Just want to say that I don't know if the chat to put questions is open already or not. It is. Okay, so feel free to put questions as I speak. I'll try to go not quick, but not take too much time to review everything. You are most welcome to put questions as I speak. We will probably tackle questions after I'm done speaking, and we can always reference back to some topic. Also, I want to say that I like to do those informative, educational webinars, and not to limit them to specific topics. So if at the end there are other questions that are not necessarily related to tonight's topic, that's okay, not a problem. We can tackle them as well. I am in, normally we say it's about an hour, and we stay longer than an hour and a half to just take questions. With that said, let me start the screen sharing. Give me a second here. Okay, good. I'm gonna wait just to make sure it's kind of comes up, and Jessica will give me thumbs up if it's working. Yep. Thank you.
You're good.
Very good. Thank you. Let's get started. Okay. One thing I want to mention is that on December the 19th, Monday, December 19th, which is about what, 2 weeks from now, something like 2 weeks from now, we have another webinar like this one. It's free. You can register. We're gonna tackle the topic of risk mitigation and risk reduction, and different aspects of risk when it comes to investing. So the topic of the 19th, if you have not, I see a lot of people have registered to both webinars. Just want to make sure you are aware. Excuse me, another webinar is coming up. All right, let me introduce myself. My name is Dani. I live in Southern California, Orange County. Jessica and I. Jessica lives not too far from me. We're both down here in Orange County. If some of you have a very good sense of hearing, you may detect an accent. I'm originally from Israel. I was born and raised in Israel and spent my first 30 years or so in Israel, which means also the Israeli military for 3 years service. And after getting my engineering degree, I moved to the States with a very clear passion in my mind for me was to pursue real estate investing. So when I came to the States in 2004, I've already done maybe, I would say, investment and a half or something like this, something, one house and other 2 small investments. And I came to the States, and I only wanted to do one thing: invest in US real estate. So we moved, my wife and I, in 2004. And since 2004 until now, what I've done for the past almost 20 years, I'm talking 18 years is actually help invest myself and help other invest in real estate. Over the course of those 18 years, I've probably helped investors to acquire something along the lines of 5,000 investment properties. When I say investment properties, primarily single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, other things as well. But the majority of the investment we are focused on, and my experience is, my comfort zone is the single family home or a smaller residential dwelling. And I have been investing throughout those 18 years or so in multiple US metros, from Phoenix to the different parts of Texas, the major ones in Texas and North Carolina and Florida, etc. So the list has about probably more than 35 different US metros. By the way, I live in Southern California, but I do not invest in California at all. So all my focus has always been remotely. So 18 years, close to 5,000 properties, probably more than 35 metros, all residential, all done remotely, right? All done remotely. Investing, and all my clients are people who invest remotely. Over the years, 18 years, we've gained a lot. We've gained a lot of knowledge, information, and we said, okay, how about we take the questions that we keep getting all the time, or like the top 10-ish questions that we're getting all the time, and let's go one by one and try to tackle them. And we kind of thought, how do we, which one are the best one or the top one based on the information that we have from our investors? And that's kind of what led to this webinar, where the main kind of essence, the main focus is investing in residential and investing remotely. So we're not going to tackle things like commercial investing or other type of investment strategies, primarily residential, residential investing. So let's get started. Will, or should I say, can the rent cover my expenses? That comes quite a lot. The simple answer is it really depends what kind of an investment you're making or investing in. But in many parts of the country, right, we live, some of you, especially those, I saw a lot of people coming from California, but that's not the only place that we have people on the line here. When we live in an expensive real estate markets, many times the rent purchase price ratio is not going to work well. It will be hard for the rent to cover the expenses, primarily because of the high mortgage payments, right? So I live in California. Rarely, if at all, can you really buy a house that the rent will cover the expenses, assuming a mortgage. If we're buying cash, it's a whole different thing. If you bought something 30 years ago, it's a whole different thing. I'm talking about today. Can I go outside in Orange County and find a house that the rent will cover the expenses? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard in many parts of the country. So the key ingredient here is the rent purchase price ratio, right? Rent purchase price ratio. For those of you who are not fully aware of it, there are parts of this country, such as the Midwest, parts of Florida, parts of Texas, that the rent can cover the expenses, right? And maybe even generate some cash flow. And again, I'm always assuming we're talking about a mortgage investment, not cash investment. That's a whole different, obviously a more trivial and simple. So the simple answer is yes, it can, right? It's just about finding the right metro, the right investment that the rent will cover the expenses. And by the way, I just want to make sure when I talk about expenses, from my experience, or what we're looking at, the expenses are normally we're going to factor some vacancy, property taxes, insurance, mortgage payments, maybe HOA if it exists, property management, a leasing fee, right, and some repair and maintenance, right? So all those things I factor in as expenses when I analyze properties. And we have we did recently, about a month ago, webinar on how to analyze properties. And we went through the process of analyzing properties, and we showed how we, evaluate and analyze properties. So the simple answer is if you may live in an expensive real estate market, it will be almost impossible or very hard for the rent to cover the expenses. But one of the reasons, maybe the main reason I'm doing it all remotely, it can be done in other parts of the country. A small side note, today, cash flow is even harder, even in those Midwest, South markets around the country because of the interest rate. So it's not impossible, it's just going to be more challenging, but definitely possible. So can you? Yes. Is it going to be in your immediate backyard? Well, it depends where your front yard, what's the view on your front yard. Many times when we tackle the type of investment we tackle and we go after, those are, I would say, I categorize them as the upper middle class, middle class, lower middle class type of neighborhoods, meaning we don't do lower end bad areas, so to speak, or terrible school rating areas, and we don't do luxury type of areas, right? We like the middle class America type of neighborhoods, communities, suburbs, good schools, etc. When we buy those properties and we analyze them and we factor in a mortgage, normally the cash flow is going to be a small cash flow of maybe $100, $200, $300 a month, at least in the first few years of the property. Many times I get my investors, sometimes I get it from the same investors, clients of mine coming back again and say, you got to remind me, if the cash flow is $200 a month and I make, I don't know, $150,000, $200,000 my salary a year, why am I doing it? What's the point of doing this, if the cash flow is so little, right? The simple answer is, if you're going to do it for the cash flow only, in my opinion, you're missing a lot of what real estate can provide you, right? The cash flow is not that exciting. I look at the cash flow that the property is generating like a bonus, like a buffer, like something that can help me if I have to lower the rent or there's more expenses, something that helps me cushion my investment. The way I really look at the cash flow is, or what I call the total ROI, is this. I look at three growth engines or vectors. One is the cash flow, right? And for me, cash flow is realistic rent minus all the expenses I outlined earlier and what's, a minute ago, and what's left. That's the true cash flow of the property. That means part of the cash flow is including the mortgage payments. Mortgage payments include in them principal and interest, right? So that means every month or every year, slowly I pay down, or my mortgage or the rent that comes in pays down the mortgage principal, and I build equity. The equity that I'm building or accumulating from the mortgage or the principal reduction is in the walls of the house. It's not in my pocket, in my wallet as we speak, or my bank account, but it's there. It's waiting for me. When am I going to see it, or when am I going to meet it? When I sell the house or when I refinance, that's there. The second thing I'm looking at is appreciation. Now, appreciation has gotten to be a bit of a tricky word. For years, I used to say appreciation, and my appreciation, when we analyze properties, I only use no more than the annual inflation, right? So I would say 3-4% a year, over time, perfect, right? Now, if I say appreciation and use the word inflation, people are like, oh my God, it's a lot. It's 7%, 8%, 9%. It's crazy. You know what? I'm tossing the current inflation out of our webinar. I'm just going to use minimal appreciation of an average 3 to 4% a year, right? So I factor that. I have the cash flow, I have the principal reduction, and I have the minimal appreciation of 3 or 4% a year. But that appreciation is compounding, right? It adds up year after year after year. And that means the entire property is appreciating, which also means my down payment or the amount I spent to buy the property appreciated even a higher rate, right? So between appreciation, even a small one, principal reduction and cash flow, I get what I call the total ROI. And the total ROI is very powerful, even if we have one property, especially if I wait multiple years. Multiple years, I would say 5 years is maybe good to wait. 7 or more, even better. Real estate, or this type of real estate, loves time. Give it time, you get more. Usually what happens with this type of real estate, rents tend to kind of crawl up slowly. It may go like this a little bit, and values, they tend to go up over time, slowly or fast. Crazy years we're seeing. It may still go through up and downs along the way, and principal reduction being reduced more and more. So that means 5 years later, 7, 10, 15 years later, all of a sudden we get this asset that it's close to being paying it off. Maybe I already managed to pay it off in 15 years, and I've only put 25, 30% down over time, right? So that's very, very powerful. It's an amazing tool for investors, right? But if we neglect to see all what the mechanism of an investment property can provide us, and we're focusing on the cash flow, and sometimes when we buy rental properties remotely, we will run into challenges with the management, with the tenant, etc. It will happen. We tend to lose focus on the big picture, and we're like, oh my God, the house is sitting vacant for a month and my cash flow is eroded. And while we're thinking about it over 7 years, like, we're not even going to remember those 4, 5, 6 months over time of vacancy that we have accumulated, not in a straight period, just over time in between tenants, right? So that's something you have to remember, not to focus on the cash flow, although it's kind of sitting in front of us and like dangling in front of us. It's all about the bigger picture, right? It's very powerful tool if we give it time, if we use leverage, and we are patient and not losing sight of the main aspect of what this amazing vehicle is giving us. All right. Property managers, right? Property managers. This has been an interesting week with property managers, affairs on our end. So we deal with property manager every week, right? Every week. Why? Because a lot of the property management issues that we have are coming from miscommunication or not calibrating expectations. I would say it's expectations well, and it's not the miscommunication. It's never perfect communication, right? It's never. No matter how one side is trying, the other side doesn't always hear what the first side wants to say. So let's start with property manager. First of all, they have a terrible reputation in our industry, right? First of all, that's our starting point. And unfortunately, that's my default coming into this, knowing property managers is a key ingredient. If you decide to use a property manager, it's a key ingredient. And the only way I can depend on property manager is if I create or set some proper checks and balances in working with property managers. So my first assumption is property managers are very challenging, right? Not necessarily crooks or bad people, is just always going to be challenging with property manager. Second thing is, if property management is challenging, how about I put a lot of time and effort, personally, Jessica and I, into making sure we're lining up good, reliable, trustworthy property managers. Now, I have dealt with well over 70 property managers in my career, right? When I say dealt with more than 70, I don't count anything that was more than any property manager manage less than, let's say, 5, 6 properties, 7 properties. I don't even count that as something, that I don't count it. It doesn't count, right? It's only when it gets to be around 10 and more is what I really count as 70. So I'm not talking about all the other 20, 30 that I ran into over my career. Now, when we tackle this, we come in with our buying power. We're coming with my experience of working with property managers, and we go and we spend many good hours on just vetting, finding, interviewing. I call it more interrogating the the property manager until we find the one that we think matches all what we're looking for. So what I'm trying to say is that, first of all, assume it's a challenge. Assume it's a challenge, right? Second, if you understand it's a challenge, it's all about your mindset, how to control that, not control, but operate that environment, right? And what do I mean by that? A lot of people put so much weight or give the property manager so much decision weight, or decision ability, they neglect to remember that you're the owner and the property manager works for you. What do I mean is this? Let's take an example. Let's say the property manager contacts me and say, you know what, I think you should rent this property for $1,400, right? Now, my analysis, whether I purchased it just now or whether it's been my property for the past 4 years, doesn't matter. I will run my own analysis or ask the property manager to provide me with comps on the rent. And I will try to come up with an understanding. Is he recommending me 1,400 because it's true and correct? Or is he kind of calibrating my expectation a bit below in order to make it easier for himself and rent it quicker, right? There's no right or wrong answer here. There's just how am I handling this situation? On my end, I need to make sure he is giving me the best recommendation and not the recommendation that it's more comfortable for him. Now, it doesn't mean the market will pay 2,000 and he's suggesting 1,400, but it very likely would mean the market will pay 15 or even 1,600. And that's where I need to tell the property manager, hey, let's put it at 1,500. Let's put it 1,550. Let's give it 2 weeks like this and see what happens, right? So I don't just go with what the property manager is telling me. I go with what I think is correct, and I'm pushing the property manager on the rent. Another example with property managers sometimes is when we have an existing tenant. Many times the property managers say, it's a good tenant. I would, when the lease comes for renewal, the property manager says, what? It's a really good tenant. They're taking really good care of the house. They're not late. I would not do anything on the rent. I would not change the rent. Let's just sit on it. Why? Wait. Why are you telling me to do it, right? It's easier for you not to tackle this because, whatever the result may be. Wait 1 second. First of all, if this guy's been in my house for 2 years and he's paying 1,400 and the market is 1,800, there is a range here. I can maybe consider increasing by $50, $100, maybe more. Maybe it's worthwhile for me to take the risk that the tenant will be upset with me raising the rate by $150 a month, and they will leave, and I'll get someone with $1,800, right? What I'm trying to say again, it's about the narrative of not letting the property manager control the situation, but either asking the good questions or working with the property manager in order to maximize your yields. Now, I'm not saying the property manager has bad intentions, but I'm just saying many of us say, oh, the property manager said 1,400, I'll go with 1,400. Why? Just because it's comfortable for you. If you're in real estate, you should by default step out of your comfort zone. This is not the place for people who are looking for comfort zone. This is a place for people saying, I see the benefit. It's not going to be comfortable, not going to be horribly uncomfortable, just a little bit uncomfortable. Step out of your comfort zone and make sure your property manager, which I call my property manager my employees, right? My business is a rental property. My business has an employee, one employee. It's called property manager, but he's my employee. I need to make sure he's doing what he's supposed to do. Like I would check on my employee, and he's giving me his inputs, but I have to check if his inputs are correct and not interpreted by something else, right? So can you trust property manager? Yes. Is it hard to find the good ones? You have to put yes. You got to put time and effort into vetting those people. It's not impossible. It's time consuming, right? A lot of reviews, etc. You can have a conversation with them. If you join a network like Simply Do It, we do a lot of the vetting, tons of the vetting ourselves. We bring a buying power with the property manager. We get better service. We get more activities from the property manager than your average client. We negotiate fees. So absolutely, you can do it on yourself. But if you're being a part of a network like Simply Do It, then a lot of that heavy lifting is not only going to be done for you, it's going to be done by a team that's doing it all the time and will very likely be able to help you when situation come up, right? So when we have a situation, let me give you an example. All the property managers that we work with, Simply Do It, my company, is their biggest account. So all our clients are under in the management company, they're under the Simply Do It account. They get automatically better service, better responses, just by the nature of being part of their biggest account. And on the top of that, when I call all the property managers because I need to run something by them, normally they pick up the phone, the owner of the company, they pick up the phone, they say, yes, sir, yes, boss, what can I do for you? I'm not their boss. I'm not an owner of the company, but they're saying, yes, boss, because they know. I have one guy who always says, yes, boss, what's the problem today and how I can help you solve it, right? That's just his mindset when I'm calling, and he knows I'm calling when there are problems. So just do your due diligence, find a good company. It's possible, right? And remember, if you do it as part of a larger network, it will benefit you financially, but also, service-wise, not just, some fee reduction or discount. It's nice, but that's just part of it. Having better service or better responses, or property manager that treats you with one property as if you have 100 because you're part of that account. I think it's very valuable.
We have a quick question about property managers. One of our attendees here wants to know what the recourse is when a tenant does not pay rent or utilities.
If the tenant doesn't pay utilities
or rent,
normally that's between him and the utility company, because that's who normally they sign up for the utility, right? So in most cases, utilities companies will go after the account owner, the tenant, right? Mm-hmm. I have seen a rare situation where the utility company came back and had something with the owner, and I don't remember exactly how it was sorted out, but that's just really, really a rare situation. If a tenant does not pay the rent, right? That was the other part of the question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There is something we called eviction.
Yes.
Right? Some states is easier. Some states is not easy at all. Some property managers like to try and work it out. Some property managers are a little bit more strict with it. I have found that most property managers, in a situation that it's a possible eviction, really listen to the owner. So many times the owner is clueless, which is too bad. But if the owner is not clueless, and some owners will say, hey, tell the tenant, we are starting eviction while we're trying to sort everything out with you on the payments. That's one way to go about it. Another owner may say, I start eviction immediately, and I don't care if you talk or not talk to the tenant. The owner will say, no, I understand. Talk to the tenant, try to work it out, and then don't start the eviction just yet. See, 3 different scenarios. Each one is going to be handled differently. Some of it is what the property manager's protocol and procedures are, but a lot of it has to do with what the owner is pushing for or advocating for. Okay, if that's not clear, we can also circle back to those questions, to that question at the end. Okay, all right. One of the most common, going back to the question number 4, right? Maybe I should do a count up. What if the market crashes, right? So I love that question, because that's a very popular question these days. So first of all, a quick side note, Jessica, did we send out the email with the interpretation of the video of the analyst?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
So
we will be sending it tomorrow.
Everybody here, has registered and will receive an email from us by an analyst, a real estate analyst, that he has good track record of predicting trends in the economy. And we took an hour, in my mind, really good video, an explanation. And if you have the capacity, the patience, the attention to watch it, I think it will contribute to a lot. But I know that a lot of people it's hard to watch an analyst for an hour. So we just did we took the main points. We have 8, 9 points that I think that the main essence of what he said, and we're going to send you an email, and it has those main points that we think that are the key ones from an hour of lecture. And then if you want to watch it, by all means, go ahead and watch it. I enjoyed it very,
it's
very
actually
much.
very interesting.
Yeah, for me it was like
Yeah.
for me it was like you know, like watching a good episode in the real estate world.
Yeah.
But going back to the question about crashes, so let me start by saying I am a graduate or a survivor of the crash of 2008, right? It's always a, you know, a challenge, which one is it, or both. In 2008, I had multiple properties myself. I had multiple investors I worked with, and I flew straight into the crash. You know, I was frontline, right? With everything that comes with being in the crash of 2008. I am scarred financially, emotionally, you know, absolutely. But the crash of 2008 was I want to say even my PhD in real estate investing, right? It taught me a lot about real estate. It made me go back to my system. And I started, instead of saying I'm surviving it, that's why I'm saying I'm a graduate, I dove in back and I kind of rebuilt my company from scratch in a way that new processes, better systems, more details, more analytics. I look at the Dani before the crash of 2008 and I look at that guy and say, he was okay, but somewhat of an, I don't want to say amateur, but not even close to where Dani or Simply Do It is today with how we go about investing in the decision-making process. So that's just kind of generally speaking. More specifically, or a few of the things that kind of taught me out of the crash of 2008 is I told myself, one of my biggest lessons learned after the crash of 2008 was, it's not about if the market crashes. I assume in a 10, 15 years of holding a piece of property, it will crash. It doesn't mean it has to be a 2008 crash all over again, but the market, statistically, every 10 years or so, we have some sort of a downturn, right? So I'm assuming, my basic assumption, a market, or you know, a real estate market will go into a downturn, right? As we are seeing right now, we are starting a recession, not a recession. We're definitely seeing a cool off. I think it's more of a correction, but definitely things cooling off relatively to the past, not just 2 years, but 6, 7 years or so. So first assumption, a downturn will happen. Okay, why am I saying it? If I'm assuming a downturn is going to happen, how about I make decisions right now, knowing that's going to happen? And a lot of the decisions we are making are based on the fact that I want to choose metros, properties, areas that have greater chances on surviving the next downturn, right? So a lot of the decisions about where to buy, what to buy, how to buy, etc., are the starting point for those decisions is this property, is this metro, has good chances surviving the next downturn, right? So right there, I'm embracing it. I'm not resisting it. I'm not intimidated by it. So that's for a very, very important point. The other 2 points that are kind of coming out of this as well is I think that you will always hear me say, and I keep saying it again and again and again. I hope it kind of drills down to everybody. I think that there's two very common sense things you can do to make sure you're doing a right investment or correct investment. One, buy quality, right? Now, buying quality is maybe very, what is quality, right? Quality is a very kind of vague term when it comes to real estate. Well, let me tell you that one of the best ways to define quality is actually, I think when I say don't buy a piece of crap, is a clearer way to know what's quality and what's not quality. So when I buy a nice house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, whatever, in a suburb of Nashville or Birmingham, Alabama, right? In a good schools area, and maybe it's 20 years old, 30 years old, 5 years old house. That's already kind of a quality kind of property versus a house in a tough neighborhood or not so good schools, with the lower end people that having a hard time to pay the rent. I'm not saying you cannot make money there, but some areas are going to be more challenging during a downturn versus the more, let's say, middle class kind of area. So one thing is buying quality, right? Second thing is long term, quality, long term, right? Remember those two things, because here's what's going to happen when you buy quality and long term. When you buy quality, we already, I think, understand what that means. When you hold it long term, and when I say long term, let's just call it at least 7 years, but ideally 10 or more, right? So let's say we hold it for 10 years. And based on my assumption, in those 10 years or so, we're going to have at least one downturn, right? But in 10 years, as we have seen in this country again and again and again for probably 60, 70 years or more, the real estate tends to go up and down. You know, of course, we had the big crash, but even with the big crash, it tends to go up and down, and over time go up, right? Over time, at least keep up with inflation. Actually, it's more than keeping up with inflation, normal inflation. But you know what? Let's just stick with the inflation rate, the normal 3-4%. That is fine. That's enough. We don't need more than that. I mean, I want more than that, but we don't have to have more than that to be successful. But the long term is an inherently way to hedge against downturn, right? Let me tell you a story to emphasize it, in the best possible way. I bought a house in Orlando in 2005, September 2005. That house I bought for $188,000, and during 2009, at the bottom, from 188, it was worth, right, according to Zillow, 84,500. So that means less than a half. So the value of the property dropped by more than a half. Was that a pleasant experience? Heck no, not at all. But in my mind, I told myself, relax, quality long term, right? Let's ride it out. This house today, 320, 350, depends on which day of Zillow we're waking up, but somewhere between 300 to 350. Let's just say, assume that, right? I'm not even selling, so it doesn't really matter. So I told myself, when that 84, I have it, the image of Zillow here in my mind. I remember 84,500. I told myself, chill out, shut up, Danny, write it out. Exactly those words, and I did, right? By the way, during those times, rents went up, vacancy went down. So cash flow, I was better, but the feeling of the value was not, right? I was patient. I told all my clients at the time that were patient, stick it out, relax, don't do anything. And truly, those who held those properties did very well over time. And those who were nervous and sold, not because something happened in their life that they had to go to maybe a foreclosure or something of that sort, but just got nervous and dropped the property and ran, those are the ones who actually accumulated the losses. And I think some of them are feel sorry for that. So assume there is a crash, factor decisions into that, not a crash, but a downturn. And if you're doing long-term and quality, there's a very good chance you're right there just by long-term and quality hedging against those downturn. Even if the house loses value over time, right? Even if that happens. So how do you make sure you're buying a good property? I want to start by putting this burden on you. What I like to tell my clients when we start working together is, tell me what a good property looks like for you. At least the minimum threshold, right? Meaning, if you tell me the criteria you have for a good property, and we see a property that meet those criteria, it's already a good start, right? Anything we do better from meeting your criteria or exceeding, it's more than just an okay property, it's a great property, right? In our analysis Excel, we have a little box, I call it the little cheat sheet. I let the clients set up their own criteria, and then every property, I call it the baseline. This is what you're seeing right now with the purplish background, my criteria. And I tell them, any property that meets or exceeds those criteria, it's already something we should consider. Anything that does not, maybe move on, right? So that means I tell them, and I tell you, do the same on your end. Take this table, spend 5 minutes tonight, tomorrow morning, I don't know when exactly, instead of using this for 5 minutes, maybe we need to do an app with that, and maybe it'll be easier. Just spend 5 minutes and ask yourself, what is a good property for you? Why am I saying for you? How can I tell what's a good property? Why would you take my set of qualities for properties or my belief system and use it if you don't agree with it or don't think this way? So use your common sense, decide what a good property looks like, set those criteria for yourself, right? It's a quick, simple, short exercise. But once you have that exercise and you start getting properties from wherever you're getting them, you can always say, how is this siding with my criteria? Is it matching or not? So that will give you what you would call a good property for you, and it will help you decide if it's good for you, not good, or even better. Now, a little side note, if you use this little cheat sheet of a table, what I like, when we in our Excel, every time the criteria of my criteria and the property are okay, match, or better, it changes where you see pass, fail to sufficient or insufficient, right? So you may get insufficient, but I want you to understand that when I look at the insufficient, what you're seeing here is fail, right? There's 2 fail points. Then you have to make some judgment call, right? The judgment call is, well, my criteria is 1,300, but this house is 1,200. Am I going to kill the deal on 1,200? Probably not, but just kind of something to kind of think about. Then again, with the rent purchase price ratio, my criteria is 0.85, but this property is generating 0.75. Is it a deal breaker or not? You're going to make that determination, maybe not. But if I see multiple fail, red dots, and even if they're close to being okay, maybe if I see 3 or more, I should consider altogether moving on to the next one. So you need to define what you think is a good property, and then match or check your criteria, your baseline with every property to see if it's a good fit, and take it from there. Move on to another property, maybe make a judgment call, or if it exceeds, hey, by all means, that should tell you I should consider putting an offer on this property. Okay, how to handle and solve ongoing issues with the house and the tenant. It all comes down, I think it's a follow-up on the question number 3 with the property managers. If you are proactive, property manager, the best way to be involved with property manager is not put it on an autopilot and forget about the property, is to be proactive. I call it supervise the property manager, and not micromanage or completely autopilot, right? If you are involved, then you can talk to the property manager, see what the situation is. If you're working with a property manager, if you're not working with a property manager, there are obviously bigger pocket, different Facebook groups that you can run your situation and get some advice. My clients, we tell them, you're always welcome to call us. Tell us what's going on. We will help you. The fact that you purchased a property with us 3 years ago, and I have not heard from you for 3 years, and now there's something complicated or something simple, call us. Let us try and help. Guess what? The property managers, when we call, they pick up the phone and answer and listen to what we, try to make sure they're doing, right? So we provide a layer of consultation, knowledge, experience, buying power to our clients. If you don't have a resource like us, maybe you do. Maybe you can be part of a real estate club or real estate group or some other network that will provide you with that support during the rental phase. But you can also talk to the property manager, challenge them. Is there another way to solve the problem? Can we get another bid? What would you do if this was your house? All those questions will generate some thinking with the property manager, and they may come up and say, you know what, now that you're asking, let's get another bid. You know what, let's go, let me talk to the head of the company, he may have some ideas here. Those are the things that will benefit you, instead of just saying, oh, they're telling me I need to fix it, it costs $1,500, I'm not sure what to do, I'm just going to spend $1,500. It may be the right answer, but sometimes to make sure you're comfortable with $1,500 with the situation, you want to explore other options as well. It all comes down to remember, this is your property, it's not the property manager's property, and it's in your best interest to make sure the property manager is doing great job or good job for you, right? So that's kind of the gist of this point. I'm nervous about investing in a property I cannot visit regularly. How do remote investors handle this? Great question. I think this part is very psychological, because a lot of investors are intimidated by going remotely, where they cannot see what's going on, and they feel it will jeopardize their control or their ability to know what's going on. So how do you do that? So first of all, I always tell my clients, fly, go out, see at least once, or maybe at least when you're buying a property, right? That's always been my suggestion. You're going to see the property or properties, you're going to see the market, meet the team, you're going to be more comfortable with what you're buying area-wise, etc. Going out to visit the metro is not going to teach you how a certain metro operates. It's going to give you some confidence. It's going to give you some comfort that what you're buying, where you're buying, who are the people. It will give you some ease, right? It's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to give you a lot of ease, actually. So that's always been my recommendation. However, my clients are just showing me, although what I'm suggesting, how they're behaving, right? Up until COVID, 85% of our clients would buy sight unseen and would never see their properties. And since COVID, probably 95% are buying sight unseen, and 5% will go once or twice, or maybe throughout the holding period or the buying period. So that means on our end, we found, or we understand, that we need to provide more transparency, more checks and balances, a little bit more than just your traditional buyer, just to compensate for the remote aspect of it. But I want to tackle it from a different direction for a second. Let's say this point, it really intimidates you, and you're like, I cannot buy a property that is far from me. I have to be able to go see, check, whatever. Okay, I get it. First of all, who says you have to buy remotely, right? If it's make you uncomfortable, or you feel you're losing control because you have a control freak or OCD or whatever, maybe this is not the right avenue for you remotely. But a lot of us, we live in an expensive real estate markets. Buying locally means a lot of money as a down payment, and maybe we don't have that much. And even if we do, who says you want to put it on one piece of property or maybe two? And also, the cash flow in some of those expensive markets is going to be terrible. So you got to ask yourself, what am I going to do? Am I going to be buying locally because I am not willing to consider out of state? Or can I consider out of state, going there, visiting, checking? Yeah, make a trip out of it. It's okay. It's also tax deductible. So you make a trip out of it. You learn. You become more knowledgeable. It will advance you as an investor. You can also join Simply Do It, because we have systems and processes and teams, and I think you already kind of get the gist of it through my answers, that we just know most of our clients do not go out. They tell us we're not gonna go out, so we try to make sure we compensate for those things. It's not perfect, guys. If it sounds like Simply Do It is the best thing on earth, which I think it is, it's not perfect, but it works well. We have a lot of those. We put a lot of time and attention to those checks and balances and system and processes. So anybody can kind of leverage or utilize what the tracks that we laid so you could benefit. So you can join a network like Simply Do It, or like Simply Do It, and that will benefit you. We're having support system, having checks and balances, having people to talk to when you are running into problem. Maybe alleviate a little bit, the concern of buying remotely sight unseen. Again, go and see, but if you don't want to go and see, you have another party that looks, that knowledgeable, that helps you make those decisions about a remote property. All those things are doable. It just matters of you finding the right formula, the right methodology for your level of comfort, right? I have a client. I had a client. He's still alive. He's just no longer a client because he bought a house September of 2019. I believe September of 2019. This guy is such a nice guy, right? Polite, pleasant to speak with, knowledgeable, intelligent. Like, the guy is super sweet. He buys the house outside of Dallas in Franny, Texas, September 2019. Very quickly, he learns that the tenant has 2 dogs, and for some reason he missed out in the communication. Again, communication. And he thinks or believes one of the dogs is a kind of riskier breed, and he goes nuts. Not nuts, like he's like, okay, I got to do this something. He insists that the tenant takes on a policy that covers the dog. He finds an expensive policy that covers the dogs. The guy is not playing around. He's he's so fearful for no good reason, but in his mind, he is nervous, and he's calling me every 2 weeks and says, Danny, I don't know what to do. You gotta talk to me and tell me I'm wrong. Tell me it's all in my mind. And conversation after conversation, almost every 2 weeks, I tell him, listen, there's nothing wrong. It's a good property, a good location. The tenant is okay. Yes, there are dogs, but it's okay. It's not unheard of. And we have insurance, so you should be good. And okay, thank you. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, again, similar conversation. And then after 2 months, he says, listen, I am not sleeping well. I'm losing sleep. The quality of my life since I became an owner is not good. And I say, all right, I tell them, listen, this is not good, right? How about, this is almost the holidays. Let's take the holidays, think about it, tell me what you want to do. I will do whatever I can, but I want to tell you that if you decide to sell so quickly, very likely you're going to lose a little bit of money, not a lot, but maybe $5,000 or so, or you're going to lose, because with all the expenses. He says, listen, I don't care. I'm ready to lose more. I'm losing my sanity here. And he decides to sell the house. We are able to find him another investor and kind of minimize his loss. The guy's like, okay, I'm done. This is not for me. He did not suspect that's going to be the case for him at all. By the way, again, I want to emphasize, there's nothing happened. Not with the dogs, not with the tenant, not with the house, nothing. He got nervous. He got uneasy. I think I had only probably 2 such situations in my career that people got nervous and they said, that's not for me. And he sold the house. He said, thank you for all the help. I appreciate it. This is not a good avenue for me. So if you know you're going to be that, don't do it, right? Don't call me nervously. I don't want to be your therapy. I want to be your investment advisor. But if you are willing, ask yourself, what needs to happen in order for me to be comfortable with buying remotely? Let me give you another example. About 10 years ago, I got one of my investors was buying his first property again in Fort Worth area, Texas. And this guy got nervous about the purchase. And after I think after he closed or during the inspection period, he said, you know what, Danny, I was so nervous about the situation. What I have done is I actually, instead of going there, the guy used to live in the Bay Area, now he lives in the LA area. Instead of going out there, I decided to buy 2 inspections from 2 different inspectors, right? So I did 2 inspections on the property from 2 separate inspectors because I felt that by doing 2, I'm kind of covering all bases, and that he found a solution. At first, I thought this guy is crazy because I've never seen that. And then like, wait. He had a problem. He had a challenge. He found a solution. And for him, it's even cheaper than flying out there. So that makes sense to him. And he was comfortable proceeding with the transaction. You know what? Amazing, right? He was challenged, found a solution that, made it comfortable for him, and he proceeded with buying the property. It happened once. I don't remember anyone else doing it since or before. Great idea, right? I'll take it. Here's a problem. Here's a solution. Works, and a cheap one. So that's what I'm trying to say. There are options, there are solutions. Sometimes a lot of what we do with our clients is when they present a fear, a concern, something along those lines, we try to show them, hey, here's how we can compensate. Here's how we can check, we can verify, we can make sure. A lot of what we do, our role is to kind of try to put our clients at ease. There's a concern you have, whether I think it's a genuine concern or not, it's not the point. This is a concern for you. Let me suggest ways how you can mitigate, how you find a solution, because I know from experience, it's all about putting clients at ease. Then they can invest comfortably. If they're nervous, it's just not going to go well. This needs to be fully passive. I don't have time and attention to be managing and dealing, but I want to invest. How do I maneuver this? Again, common question, all of them. All right. Let's split the time aspect into 2 main components: purchasing and everything after, right? Owning and after. When I purchase properties, there's a more of a, more time is more I need to put the time and effort to make decision. Yes, to put an offer on this property, not put an offer on this property, etc. Right? So that may have more time consuming in the evening when I'm done with work and whatever and family. I need to spend an hour or 2, once or twice a week until I find the property, and then submit an offer and put some time into it after that. If you don't have that time, yes, it's going to be challenging, right? We do with some of our clients, if they're comfortable and they're willing to outsource that decision to us, we do it. We say, okay, we found you the property. Maybe just spend 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to make sure it's okay, and we can proceed. If you want to do that, most of our clients, they want to be involved, not involved enough to make those decisions, verify, which we encourage and help do. Sometimes someone says, I have almost no time. If I don't outsource that decision to you, and you just tell me which one to buy, and I'll take a look and I'll make sure it's fine, then it's not going to happen. So remember that there is time-consuming commitment there. There's time commitment there. Some investors think that when we buy a rental property, it's passive income. It is not, right? It's just not a passive income. Is it full work? Probably not in our world. Does it require some time and attention on your behalf, on the ongoing, when you're in the management? Absolutely. Make sure they list the house as they said, right? Make sure the vendor that they said that they will coordinate with the tenant has been there. Make sure that the work has been done. Oh, those are the, what's going on. Make decision. Property manager calls you. He needs you to approve an expense. If you wait for 3 weeks to approve, he's not going to proceed, right? So make sure you spend a few minutes reviewing, asking questions, approving. It's going to cost you per property probably about an hour a month, depending on the type of property you're doing, maybe half an hour a month, maybe 2 hours a month, depending on the type of property. But normally we see on average about an hour a month per property, in order to verify, supervise, check on things, just to make sure everything goes according to the plan, right? That you need that time and attention to make sure the property manager, guess what? There are also people didn't forget, neglect, missed something, fell through the cracks. That's it. That's the business of supervising property managers. That you don't have to like it. It's just part of this system. But if you understand it and accept it, then you will follow through with that and you will check on the property manager. It does take a little bit of time. So it is difficult, not difficult. It could be very difficult for someone who is super busy. It could be a little bit less, intense or time requirement when you use a property manager. And also, again, if you're part of Simply Do It, we try to find ways how to remind you to do things, how to help you with situations that you're feeling a little bit kind of lost or not sure what to do with a property manager, but it still requires your time and attention to check, to follow up with those things. That's why I don't call it passive income. It's not super time consuming, but it does require some time and attention on your behalf. Will my investment property rent after I close? Wow. All right. Simple answer is no guarantee, right? Realistic answer is they do, right? Is it going to be renting the day after closing? Probably not, right? Normally, when we're not in the winter, in the type of communities we are investing in, it takes about a month to a month and a half to rent after closing, right? Can it take 2 months? Yes. 3 months? Yes. 4 months? Yes, right? When we go beyond 2 months on our end, for us, it's a little bit of a red flag. We're trying to jump in and see what's going on. We find that many times the reason it's not renting is because a mistake has been done many times by the owner. For example, not allowing pets, right? Pets are in our category of properties. Pets are 60% of the tenants, right? So not allowing pets, you're just eliminated 60% of the market. We have had situations where the owner was supposed to send maybe a few $1,000s to the property manager so they can start the work on the property, what we call the make ready, right? To freshen it up before between the closing and the leasing, right? Maybe need to paint it, maybe need to fix few things, typical. And they just didn't send it. Why? Yeah, life. It took them 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month and a half to send those funds. And meanwhile, the property is sitting there. Okay. The property manager, I had a situation where I called the property manager. I was all agitated. It's like, what's going on? And what are you doing? I said, Danny, relax. Listen, I've been chasing this guy for a month and a half, multiple emails, multiple calls. He either is not responding or says he'll take care of it. We need to spend, we need to make the house ready for renting. He's holding the funds. I can't move forward. I said, done. I called the guy. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, don't sorry, but it's your property. I feel bad. And then we got it sorted out quickly. So those are the type of things that many times it's up to the owner, and the owner is not always knowledgeable about yes or no, or doesn't know to ask the question. They just come with certain, decision beforehand, which is not always a good one. And they don't understand that it hurts them. And I have seen situations where the property managers tells the owner, I don't recommend you do that. That will hurt your listing ability, the quickness, etc. Second thing that can happen, maybe in the winter it takes a little bit longer, or even in the summer it can be a little longer. Then we have to be a little bit more on kind of check on the activity. Have we had a lot of activity or no activity, or how much activity? Meaning people asking and having showings. Most property managers, if not all, can track that. And maybe we need to adjust the price or something else with the property. Maybe someone came and said your house is, something is off with the tree at the front, and that prevents, renters. And maybe we thought we can rent it for $1,800, and the market is telling us that we can rent it for $1,650. So we have to be a little bit, kind of on the top of things to make sure we make decisions, right? When we estimate rents, when we analyze the property, before buying it. It's an estimate, right? It's not an exact science. By the time you put a house on the market, either there could have been a little bit of shifting in pricing, there could have been a shifting in seasonality, and also if nothing of that happened, right, it could be that the market is thinking different than us. So we have to adjust and be ready for it. I will tell you that I would say in our network of Simply Do It of many hundreds of properties in multiple markets, we will get 2 to 3 properties a year that will take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to rent. It will happen, right? We have 2 of them right now. Actually, they're not even 2 months yet. They're just about. They're about 2 months at the moment. And I think one of them has an application, right? It will happen. Do we get 2 to 3, 4 clients a year that will last more than 2 months, maybe 2 to 3 months? Absolutely, it will happen. I know it's horrible when it's yours, but it will happen. Most of them do not take that long. And if they do, almost always there's a reason why it's taking that long, right? And that's when many times we step in and try to understand what can we do, ask the questions, suggestion. Reducing the price is part of it. It's not always the only thing. So absolutely, part of making sure where we buy is to make sure we know it's possible to rent there. If we know an area is difficult or going through some softness or a community is saturated, we are staying away from those communities to begin with. But as long as we know this area should not be problematic, we tend to list those properties with normal times. I don't want to say quickly, that although that happens, normal times. All right, guys, we're getting down to the last question, right? From here, how do I get started? So I want to tell you a little bit, a short story about this question, because about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I had a marketing consultant who came to me and said, I want you to analyze all the questions you get in your intake. We have intake, everybody completes before they meet with us, and tell me what are the top asked questions. And when we did this exercise, according to the marketing consultant, the number one asked questions by far was, how do I get started? Which I was very surprised. I thought like it's very obvious how to get started, but it shows me, that I was wrong about it. So I said, okay, if this is the main questions, let's tackle this one. How do I get started? Well, it really depends a little bit where you are in the process. If you are really the beginning of just thinking about it, I call it the sponged area. Take your time to listen to webinars about, mobile home investing or self-storage investing, and maybe about flipping, and maybe about notes, and maybe you listen to a guy with an accent who talks about remote residential investing, whatever. Take the time to kind of take it all in. You got to put the time on your mental schedule, calendar, and say, that's it, enough. There is enough information out there that you can go on and on and on and keep studying and not executing, right? Every time you hear a speaker, the speaker is good, it sounds exciting, and you decide you want to pursue that until you hear the next speaker, and so on and so forth. So how about you take some time to observe, find your niche. How do you find your niche? It's whatever speaks to you in terms of budget, the timing requires, the comfort zone you have, some belief system, your common sense, your experience, whatever. Normally, we have enough experience going through life to know which one of the different investment avenues we feel more comfortable about, and put the others aside and focus, at least for now, on this one, right? So stop being a sponge, start doing, executing or moving towards execution in the strategy you determine it's more suitable to you right now based on all those personal values. Now go back to the criteria I just showed you. Let's scroll back to it if you're not sure, and then set them up. Take 5 minutes and set it up. Qualify to yourself what would consider a good investment property, and that will be your guide. And then start executing. And if you got to this point and you're still confused or not sure what to do, guess what? Get in touch with us. We're going to help you. That's what we do every day. We speak with clients, potential investors. We take the time to talk with you and understand what's your concerns and fears and unknowns. And we try to kind of create some understanding and clarity and maybe some direction. And you may find that we are a good fit for you, and you are a good fit for us. And you may find that actually this is not a good avenue for you, or the most suitable avenue, and that's okay too. So if you're not sure, how about to execute, and you heard everything I spoke and maybe listen to other seminars or webinars that I've done, you are most welcome to sign up and meet either with Jessica or with me. And we will spend probably 30 to 45 minutes at no cost. And we're going to take this investing thing from a general idea to a one-on-one intimate conversation with you based on your concerns, your fears, your questions, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish in those, we call it strategy session. It's kind of bring it down to your level of individual who wants to invest and have some questions, many questions, etc. We can do it in person if you're in Orange County, by phone, Zoom, whatever is suitable for you. The only thing we ask is you take 3 to 4 minutes and complete our intake form. The intake form, which is, the link is at the bottom. It's simplydoit.net/intake. It's not asking for any personal information or social security or money or credit card, anything. It's just kind of a few questions that help us get ready to the conversation with you, give us a little bit more kind of, asking you a few questions that will help you also get ready for the call. And once you complete it, we set up a time, we talk, and then we decide if this is a good fit. My promise to you, no sales pitch whatsoever in the conversation. No boot camps, we don't have any. No other seminars for a fee. No books and tapes. A pure conversation about investing and exploring if this is a good fit. That's it. Simple as that. We hold those conversations, every week. So if you want to do that, go to the intake or get in touch with us. We can always direct it to the intake. I do want to give you one gift and one suggestion. If you want to read my simple book about remote investing, it's, I don't know, maybe 30 pages long or so. It's not a sales pitch. Again, it's kind of an outline, methodical outline, how to go about it, suggestion, tips, ideas. You're most welcome to download the ebook on simplydoit.net/ebook. I also want to mention that we have a YouTube channel with hundreds of videos. Probably this will go there as well. We have a podcast with hundreds of episodes, all about investing, of course. And I try, when I speak in our events, whatever media source I'm using, is to teach, to educate, to explain, to be very simple about it, to be very straightforward about it. That's always been my style. So I believe that if we provide value to people who consume information from us, they will probably end up wanting to explore the possibility of working together. Simple as that. Here's our contact information. You're most welcome to contact us about, a strategy session, about something else. You can check different properties we consider on reistart.com. I think that's it for now. Oh yeah, of course, we have the December 19th, Monday, December 19th webinar about risks. We're going to talk about that. You're most welcome to register if you have not done so already. Do we have questions, or am I like, actually only an hour and 10, 15 minutes? I'm surprised.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Usually an hour and a half. So so I've allowed everybody to unmute themselves if they have any last minute questions. Is there anyone that's got something on their mind that they want to bring up to the group?
So the one guy that asked me specifically is this is also relevant for Canada or only US? I will just say it's US real estate, but we have Canadians who invest in US real estate. So that's generally speaking, answering your question is US real estate. But if you actually listen to the questions and the answers that I've talked about and covered, they are not geographically related just to the US, right? Property manager, if you work with property manager in Canada, without experiencing Canadian property manager, I will assume it's a similar breed. It's not a completely different creature. So a lot of my answers are also related wherever your real estate is, right? But the core of our activity is US based properties.
Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to bring up or any leftover questions that weren't in the chat?
Perfect.
All right.
All right. I think that's good. We held everybody for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you for those who survived all the way to the end. Thank you for Jessica for putting it together.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for your time to join us.
Have a terrific rest of your night. See you soon, hopefully on the 19th. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.